In this section of our tutorial series, I will introduce you to the logic editor and explain its functionality. The logic editor in Incari Studio allows us to create interactivity and dynamic logic visually without writing a single line of code. To enable it, go to View and select Logic Editor. Since we'll need more space to work, click and hold the top bar of the Logic Editor window and drag it out of the layout to detach it. If you have a second monitor, I recommend moving the Logic Editor there to maximize your workspace. For now, I'll place it here. The center of the Logic Editor is where we build the logic. Navigating this space is similar to the 2D scene view. Hold down the middle mouse button to pan and use the mouse wheel to zoom. In the top left corner, you'll find options for importing logic, as well as features for organizing your graph, such as grouping, highlighting nodes, and aligning them. If we go over to the left panel here, we are currently on the Explorer tab, which lists the content of this graph. If we click the one below it, we will see our toolbox. This lists all the available nodes in Incari. You can see that each category of node has a different icon next to it. Below the toolbox, you'll find additional tabs like Events, Functions, Prefabs, and Variables. We'll cover these features in a future video. At the top of the Logic Editor, you'll notice a tab labeled Speed Meter with a green highlight, indicating the current scene where we are building our logic. To create our first logic, switch to the Project tab. From the toolbox, go to the Development category and drag a console node into the workspace. Congratulations! You've now created your first node. This is a node. A node is a small box like this, which has a series of inputs and outputs. Each node can be thought of as being like a machine, which performs a specific function. Like a machine, we often need both a way to turn it on, or trigger it, and a way to pass in something which the machine needs to perform its function. We connect nodes using two types of connections, which can be thought of as being like wires or cables. On one hand, we have the connections which trigger the execution of nodes, which we refer to as pulses, and are characterized as a thick white line connecting nodes together. And on the other hand, we have the data connections. These have different colors, depending on the type of data that they are transporting. Nodes themselves have a number of icons on their left and right sides, referred to as sockets, much like sockets or ports of an electronic device. These are where we plug our connections into. On the left, we have the input sockets, and on the right, we have the output sockets. The white circular icons here show that these are pulse sockets, while the colored icons below represent data sockets. So with that information in mind, let's come back to the console node. This node outputs some information to the console module. It is used for debugging and testing purposes. If we click on the console node, we will see that this, like objects, has a set of attributes. The one I want to highlight in this case is the value attribute, which says Hello World. This means that the value of this attribute should be what we see in the console once this node is executed. And to execute it, we can simply left-click and drag from the output pulse socket of the event node to the input pulse socket of the console node. To be able to see something, we right-click here and get the console module, then move it to the Asset Manager. Drag it a little larger like this. Now, when we go back to our main window and press the play icon to start the simulation, we should see a message in the console saying Hello World. Scroll a bit up, here it is. Please bear in mind, especially if you have little or no experience with programming of any kind, that if any of these terms and concepts seem overwhelming, it will become much clearer as we start seeing nodes used in context. All of the terminology is of secondary importance. The thing that matters is seeing how nodes function and interact with one another, which is what we will be doing in our next lesson when we start building this foundational introduction and gradually introduce more nodes and complexity.